In 2018, at a wedding venue in New Jersey, a mobile DJ unboxed a speaker that looked exactly like a QSC K12. It had the same curved ABS plastic cabinet. It had the same sleek steel grille. It promised the same 1,000 watts of Class D power. But the badge on the front belonged to a budget import brand, and the retail price was not $849. It was $299. The American standard for portable sound had been perfectly cloned, and the price floor of the live audio market had just collapsed. A decade earlier, the original K Series was the definitive answer to heavy, unreliable stage gear. The paradox is that QSC had not failed. They had succeeded so absolutely that they accidentally created an entire industry of cheap imitations. But the real story of the QSC K Series is not just how Costa Mesa engineering conquered the American stage. It is the story of what happens when a company builds a portable speaker so perfectly that the market spends the next decade trying to make it cheap, disposable, or invisible. Every week, we tell the stories of American speakers, audio brands, and the live stages that once shaped how people heard music, and what happened when the market changed the rules. Subscribe if that history matters to you. The story begins not with nostalgia, but with a specific place, in Costa Mesa, California, in 2009. Before a single blue LED illuminated a stage in Costa Mesa, the American live sound market was defined by heavy wood, heavy metal, and manual labor. To understand why a plastic 12-inch speaker became an industry standard, you first have to look at the physical toll of American gigging in the 2 decades before it arrived. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, a mobile DJ playing a wedding in a New Jersey banquet hall, or a rock band setting up in a Texas dive bar, faced a brutal logistical reality. For years, the American working musician relied on passive PA systems. Passive speaker, a cabinet that requires an external, separate power amplifier to produce sound. These were usually massive wooden boxes covered in durable black carpet, like the ubiquitous PV SP2 or the JBL JRX series. They required thick, heavy speaker cables. More importantly, they required a separate amplifier rack, a rolling, steel-framed rack containing 2 or 3 iron core amplifiers could easily weigh over 150 pounds. The musician was not just a performer, they were a mover of freight. The audio industry knew this was a problem. By the turn of the millennium, manufacturers began putting the amplifier inside the speaker cabinet, creating the active speaker. Models like the Mackie SRM450 offered a glimpse of the future, but there was a critical flaw in the early active revolution: heat. Early active speakers relied heavily on Class AB amplification. Class AB, an amplifier topology that delivers clean sound but generates a massive amount of wasted heat. To keep these internal amplifiers from melting, manufacturers had to bolt heavy. Aluminum heat sinks to the back of the speaker cabinet. On a cool night in a dark club, they worked perfectly. But the American gigging market is not confined to dark clubs. It includes outdoor summer festivals in Florida, afternoon weddings in Arizona, and block parties sitting on hot asphalt. Under a baking sun, pushed to high volumes, these early active speakers would frequently suffer from a catastrophic failure known as thermaling. Thermaling, an automatic protection mode where an overheating amplifier abruptly shuts off its own power to prevent an electrical fire. For a working DJ, there is no sound more terrifying than a packed dance floor suddenly going dead silent because a heat sink could not shed temperature fast enough. The American live sound market was trapped. You could choose the heavy, back-breaking reliability of a passive wooden rig, or you could choose the lighter, convenient, but thermally fragile active speaker. That was the American absence. The market desperately needed a speaker that was loud enough for a concert, light enough to carry in one hand, and efficient enough to run all night without shutting down. The company that solved this problem was not known for making plastic portable speakers. Founded in 1968 by Patrick Quilter, QSC. Originally, the Quilter Sound Company was based in Costa Mesa, California. For 40 years, QSC was the silent muscle of the American audio industry. They built the heavy, rack-mounted power amplifiers that drove cinema sound systems, recording studios, and touring concert rigs. They understood raw wattage. They understood how to make electrical power survive the abuse of the road. By 2009, QSC engineers realized that amplifier technology had finally evolved enough to change the geometry of the stage. The key was a shift from heavy Class AB power to modern Class D modules. Class D, an amplifier design that uses rapid electrical switching to produce massive power with incredible efficiency, generating very little heat. Instead of building another heavy metal amplifier for a rolling rack, Costa Mesa Engineering decided to shrink 1,000 watts of Class D power, enclose it in an injection-molded ABS plastic shell, and tune it to match a custom woofer and tweeter. In 2009, QSC introduced the K Series to the American market, launching the 8-inch K8, the 10-inch K1010, and the 12-inch K12. The flagship K12 weighed just 41 pounds. It had no massive exterior heat sinks. It required no external amplifier rack. It simply plugged into a standard wall outlet. But launching a revolutionary product is not the same as convincing a skeptical market to trust it. When the K Series debuted, it faced a massive economic hurdle. The original manufacturers suggested retail price for a single K12 was approximately $849. In the economic climate of 2009, a pair of K12s represented an investment of nearly $1,700. At the time, working musicians could easily buy a pair of entry-level passive wooden speakers for less than half that amount. QSC had to prove that the high price was justified, not just by the sound, but by the survival of the equipment. The company executed an aggressive distribution push through the Guitar Center retail network, placing the sleek, black plastic cabinets directly on the showroom floors where American musicians came to spend their weekends. They shipped inventory to major regional rental houses. They made sure the speakers were visually distinct. A clean steel grille, cast aluminum handles, and a professional blue LED on the front baffle that simply let the room know the speaker was armed and ready. Behind the scenes, Costa Mesa was executing a massive shift in liability. In the old days of passive PA systems, if a DJ turned the mixer up too high and sent a distorted, clipped signal to the speaker, the paper cone would tear or the voice coil would melt. When that happened, it was the user's fault. The user had blown the speaker. But by putting the amplifier inside the box and charging $849 for it, QSC took ownership of the risk. A mobile DJ could not be expected to monitor internal temperatures or voltage limits in the middle of a gig. The speaker had to monitor itself, every component. The woofer, the compression driver, the crossover, and the amplifier was now a closed, unified system. The amplifier company had built a plastic speaker. Now, they had to convince the American working musician that lightweight did not mean weak. To an American gigging musician walking into a retail showroom in 2009, the physical presence of a QSC K12 was disarming. It did not look like the brute force PA gear of the past. The cabinet was not covered in cheap black carpet that attracted dust and bar spills. It was cast from textured ABS plastic, giving it a sleek, utilitarian profile that felt closer to a piece of military hardware than a traditional wooden speaker. It featured heavy-duty aluminum handles cast directly into the mold, perfectly balanced so a performer could carry one in each hand without tipping off center. Across the front, a powder-coated steel grille curved elegantly, protecting the drivers while hiding the mechanics inside. But the true breakthrough of the K Series was not the plastic shell. It was the back panel. For decades, The back of a live speaker was a dumb terminal. It had a jack for a speaker cable, and it did exactly what the external amplifier told it to do, even if that meant destroying itself. The back of the K12 looked like a command center. It featured locking combo inputs, independent gain knobs for multiple channels, and RCA inputs so a user could plug in a consumer device without a separate mixing board. Most importantly, it featured a row of simple switches that unlocked the real secret of Costa Mesa's engineering, DSP. DSP, Digital Signal Processing, is an onboard microchip that constantly monitors and adjusts the audio frequencies in real time to shape the sound, prevent distortion, and protect the hardware. QSC had programmed their Class D amplifier module not just to push power, but to think. The user did not need a degree in acoustics to use it. They simply flipped a switch. One of those switches activated Deep TM mode. Deep mode, a digital algorithm that forced the woofer to produce lower bass frequencies while simultaneously preventing the cone from traveling too far and tearing apart. To understand what this meant for the American audio market, you have to look at the reality of a live performance. Imagine a mobile DJ playing a packed wedding reception in New York. The dance floor is full. The client wants the music louder. The DJ pushes the faders on their mixing board past the safe limit, creating mixer clipping. Mixer clipping, sending an overloaded, distorted electrical signal from the soundboard directly into the speaker. In 1989, sending a clipped signal to a traditional PA system meant the voice coil, a coil of wire attached to the speaker cone that moves when electricity passes through it, would rapidly overheat, melt, and fail. The speaker would blow, the music would stop, the gig would end in disaster. In 2010, when that same New York DJ sent a clipped red-line signal into a QSC K12, the speaker simply refused to die. The internal DSP recognized the dangerous voltage, engaged a digital limiter, and instantly clamped down on the signal before it could melt the voice coil. The crowd kept dancing. The DJ kept their reputation. The speaker survived to play another night. This was the American moat. The K Series sounded incredibly clean, offering a wide, even frequency response. How accurately a speaker reproduces low, middle, and high sounds across the room. But its true competitive advantage was survival. QSC had built a speaker that protected itself from the user. That survival justified the high price. At roughly $849 for a single K12, the initial purchase was steep. A pair cost a gigging band nearly $1,700. But the economic math of the American stage had shifted. A traditional passive system required buying two heavy wooden cabinets, a separate steel rack, a heavy iron core power amplifier, an external crossover unit, and thick gauge copper speaker cables. When you added up the total cost, the K Series was not just lighter, it was economically competitive. More importantly, it eliminated the constant, lingering cost of replacing blown woofers and melted tweeters. Once American working musicians realized the math, the adoption rate exploded. The distribution network pushed the K Series to every corner of the country. On the showroom floors of Guitar Center, the K12 became the premium demonstration unit. The speaker salespeople would turn on to end an argument about which active PA to buy. In the massive direct mail catalogs of Sweetwater Sound in Fort Wayne, Indiana, the K Series dominated the live sound pages, shipping out by the pallet to rural towns and suburban zip codes. Professional rental houses, the ultimate testing ground for audio durability, bought in heavily. Companies like Studio Instrument Rentals, or SIR, in Los Angeles added fleets of K10s and K12s to their inventory because a rental speaker that protects its own voice coil is a speaker that generates pure profit. They began appearing as floor monitors on prestigious broadcast stages. They were installed in rapidly growing megachurches across Texas, where volunteers needed a sound system that was foolproof and professional. They became the absolute minimum requirement for high-end mobile DJ networks operating out of New York and Chicago. The badge on the grille was not decoration. It was a promise about sound. A promise that no matter how hot the room was, how hard the mixer was pushed, or how long the set lasted, the music would not stop. The K Series had solved the physics of the stage, but it had also created a monster, a market that now expected concert-level volume from a box you could carry in one hand. By 2010, the QSC K Series had crossed the invisible line separating professional audio gear from cultural omnipresence in America. It was no longer just an alternative to heavy wooden cabinets. It was the standard against which every portable sound system in the country was judged. The American live sound ecosystem had reorganized itself around the footprint of the K12, the K10, and the compact K8. To understand the scale of that dominance, you had to look at the distribution network that fed American stages every weekend. In Fort Wayne, Indiana, the massive shipping docks of Sweetwater Sound loaded hundreds of K-Series boxes onto freight trucks daily, sending them out to suburban music stores, regional sound companies, and rural high school gymnasiums. On the retail floors of Guitar Center locations from Chicago to Los Angeles, stacks of K-12 boxes sat near the front entrance like crates of high-demand consumer electronics. The gear was everywhere because the American entertainment infrastructure demanded a machine that could survive the road without requiring a dedicated audio engineer. In Austin, Texas, gigging bands packed a pair of K10s into the trunks of compact cars, abandoning the heavy wooden wedge monitors of the past. In Nashville, Tennessee, singer-songwriters playing acoustic sets on Lower Broadway plugged directly into the back of a K8, letting the onboard DSP clean up their vocals above the noise of crowded honky-tonks. In Chicago, mobile DJ syndicates running 4-day wedding weekends stacked K12s on tripod stands, knowing the blue LED on the front baffle would stay lit from the first processional to the final closing track. Rental houses anchored the commercial proof of the machine. Companies like Studio Instrument Rentals in Los Angeles and regional AV providers across the country maintained massive fleets of K-Series speakers. In the rental business, durability translates directly to profit. A speaker that protects its own voice coil from burned-out copper and cracked diaphragms is a speaker that stays out of the repair shop and on the stage. The institutional adoption was just as swift. Mega churches across the American Sunbelt installed K-Series boxes as flyable arrays or floor wedges, trusting the foolproof internal limiting to protect the system from volunteer operators. High school marching bands, community theater groups, and municipal park departments use them for outdoor rallies, where unpredictable weather and long extension cords tested the limits of electrical safety. For an American working musician in 2012, the glowing blue LED behind the steel grille was not just a power indicator. It was a physical guarantee that the room would be filled and the gig would be paid. By the midpoint of the decade, QSC's Costa Mesa manufacturing lines were churning out tens of thousands of K-Series units annually to satisfy a relentless backlog of domestic orders. Major regional distributors in Dallas, Atlanta, and Seattle reported that the K12 had become the single fastest-moving active loudspeaker SKU in their inventories. In the secondhand market, used units retained up to 80% of their original retail value after 3 years of heavy road use, a financial anomaly in consumer electronics, where depreciation usually strips half a product's worth the moment it leaves the showroom floor. The machine was self-sustaining. Every successful gig in a Chicago hotel ballroom or an Austin outdoor patio acted as a live demonstration for the next potential buyer in the room. Yet, in the engineering laboratories back in California, the success of the original design created an invisible ceiling. When a company builds an object that satisfies every immediate demand of the working stage, the market stops looking for innovation and starts demanding permanence. The blue LED remained lit across thousands of American venues. But audio technology is a restless ecosystem. While mobile DJs and gigging bands praised the indestructible polymer shell, the broader American entertainment landscape was quietly shifting underneath their tripod stands. The K Series had built an empire of sound on the American stage, unaware that the rules of retail and consumer desire were about to rewrite themselves. By 2014, the QSC K Series was the undisputed ruler of the American portable PA landscape. But in the ecosystem of American consumer electronics and live sound, total market dominance is a dangerous position. It invites imitation. The decline of the original K Series era did not begin with a catastrophic corporate collapse or a sudden bankruptcy. It began with a small crack. That small crack appeared on the digital shelves of online retailers and in the display aisles of budget music stores across America. Competitors in the audio market noticed the exact formula that Costa Mesa had perfected: an injection-molded plastic cabinet, a lightweight Class D amplifier module, and an integrated DSP limiter. Other audio manufacturers realized they could bypass the expensive R&D, the high-grade ABS resin compounds, and the strict quality control standards that QSC maintained. They began producing budget-tier loudspeakers that looked remarkably like a K12 from 10 feet away, sported similar curves, and claimed identical power ratings on paper, while carrying a price tag that was a fraction of the original. This introduced the first systemic force eating away at the golden standard. Force 3, the flood of low-cost imports and good-enough private label alternatives. For a working mobile DJ playing weekend gigs in Ohio, or a church volunteer group in Georgia shopping on a tight municipal budget, the economic calculation shifted. When an unbranded or budget-tier plastic speaker on Amazon promised 1,000 peak watts for $299, the $840 price point of a genuine QSC K12 suddenly looked like a luxury. The cheaper speaker did not need to sound pristine at high volumes. It did not need the sophisticated, proprietary deep TM filtering algorithm that protected woofers from thermal fatigue. It only needed to look professional on a tripod stand and play loud enough for a backyard party. The price floor of the American live sound market had cracked, and the market was rewarding cheap convenience over-engineered reliability. As low-cost plastic boxes flooded the retail channels, a second, more subtle force began reshaping the stage. Force 5, the technological and aesthetic shift in live sound. By the mid-2000s, the aesthetic expectations of American events were changing. Event planners, high-end wedding clients, and corporate audio directors grew tired of seeing heavy, industrial plastic boxes mounted on tripod stands with sprawling cable runs. They wanted cleaner lines. They wanted equipment that disappeared into the room. This aesthetic fatigue opened the door for a completely different acoustic form factor: the portable column array. Brands like Bose with their L1 systems and Electro Voice, with their Evolve series, popularized tall, slender arrays of tiny drivers paired with a floor subwoofer. These column systems offered wide sound dispersion and a sleek, modern visual profile that made traditional 12-inch PA cabinets look bulky and dated to event coordinators. For mobile DJs and acoustic acts working upscale venues, the tripod-mounted K12 was no longer the default choice. The market was splitting. One half chased the bottom with cheap, disposable plastic clones. The other half chased visual discretion with column arrays. The original K Series had built an unassailable reputation for durability, but the ground beneath the tripod stands was shifting, forcing Costa Mesa to confront a market that no longer valued industrial over-engineering alone. As the decade wore on, the pressure on Costa Mesa intensified. The market was no longer listening to the engineering pedigree of the amplifier company. It was listening to the price tag on a computer screen and the design trends of modern event staging. The second major structural wave hit with full force. Force 5, the technological, retail, and listening culture shift. Traditional stereo setups and single-cabinet PA speakers were losing ground to lifestyle-oriented simplicity. the average gigging environment in America changed. Event planners demanded low-profile elegance. Coffee shops, small wine bars, and corporate boardrooms preferred room-filling background music that did not require a bulky plastic box on a tripod stand. Even within the mobile, DJ, and live band sectors, the physical footprint of the gear became a liability. Competitors pushed lightweight column arrays that could fit into a single shoulder bag, leaving the 41-pound K12 looking like a relic of a heavier, louder generation. QSC responded by refining the architecture, launching updated iterations, and pushing digital control deeper into the hardware. But the golden era of the original K Series, when a single plastic box could define the absolute standard of American portable sound without competition, had passed. The retail landscape had transformed. The showroom floor had shrunk, the catalog had moved online, the price floor had given way. The tripod stand held a different shape. The original QSC K Series did not survive the market it conquered. It was replaced by updated iterations, overshadowed by sleek column arrays, and undercut by a flood of cheap, imported plastic clones that learned how to copy its shape without matching its engineering. Yet, the brand that built it did not vanish. Unlike the traditional American hi-fi stereo companies of the mid-20th century that dissolved into corporate bankruptcy or were reduced to empty trademarks, QSC adapted. The corporate entity survived, evolving into a powerhouse of commercial audio, cinema processing, and networked amplification. The company is still headquartered in Costa Mesa, California, maintaining its engineering laboratories and corporate offices just miles from where the first K12 prototype was assembled in 2009. But if you want to find the true legacy of the original K Series, you do not look in a corporate boardroom. You look in the secondary market and the professional preservation community, on online vintage audio marketplaces, Reddit discussion boards, and professional gear forums. The original 2009 K Series commands a distinct kind of respect. Mobile DJs, regional sound technicians, and independent musicians actively hunt for early generation K10s and K12s. They bypass newer budget models and cheap plastic alternatives, searching instead for the units with the heavy cast aluminum handles and the original Blue Power LED. Specialized repair benches across America still see them roll in. Units that have survived 15 years of being dropped down flight stairs, baked in the trunks of cars during July heat waves, and soaked in spilled beer at dive bar gigs. Technicians pop open the ABS plastic shells, replace worn power supply capacitors, clean out dust-choked fan paths, and test the internal DSP boards. The original hardware still matters for a very specific physical reason. An early generation QSC K Series speaker with a healthy Class D amplifier module and a functioning DSP limiter can still do what many modern budget-tier plastic boxes cannot: push clean, uncompressed sound across a loud room without burning out its voice coil. Not because it is historic, because real engineering is measured by how long a machine can take a beating and keep working. If you drive down to the industrial loading docks of studio instrument rentals in Los Angeles, or visit regional equipment rental houses across Chicago and New York, you can still find them. They sit stacked on rolling metal shelves, their textured plastic cabinets scuffed, their steel grills slightly dented, and their rubber feet worn down from decades of transport. They are no longer the cutting-edge standard of the American stage. But when a last-minute gig pops up in a crowded warehouse or a roadside venue, an audio engineer will often reach past the new disposable plastic boxes, grab an original K12, plug it into the wall, and flip the power switch. The blue LED illuminates the room. The American live sound market changed, the aesthetics shifted, the price floor collapsed, but in the corner of a dimly lit dive bar in Austin, Texas, a scratched, battle-tested QSC K12 still stands upright on a tripod stand, waiting for the mixer to turn up, the music to start, and one more night of moving the air. See you in the next video.